Hi there, I'm Nabil Murad, and I would like to talk to you about analyzing data in Excel. We have different ways of analyzing data, whatever your data, whether it's student scores, whether it's sales figures, whether it's product prices, or some expenses. And although we have different techniques for analyzing our data, maybe by using pivot tables, by creating dashboards, but the technique that I'll be showing you today is called the frequency distribution. So, what does it mean, frequency distribution? In my first example, I have a list of student scores. So these are the student names and these are the scores they got in one of their exams. And I created a min function in cell F2, and the min function calculates the lowest score I have in the list, and then I created in cell F3 a max function to find out the highest score I have in the list. And I'm quite sure you are familiar with the min and max function. And then I divided these scores into brackets. So I would like to find out how many students got between 41 and 50, how many students got between 51 and 60, and so on. And this is what we call the frequency distribution, the number of occurrences in each bracket. To create a frequency distribution, I can use a function called the frequency function, and this is an example of an array function. If you look at the arguments for the frequency function, it says data array, which simply means the list of scores, and bins array, which simply means the highest side of each bracket. So let's start by preparing for using the frequency function. So in the bins column, I'm going to type the highest side of each bracket. So I'll type 50, and because I'm using Office 2016, the moment I start typing 6, the second occurrence, the flash fill technique offers to continue the entire list for me. All what I have to do is to hit enter, and Excel is doing the heavy lifting for me. Now let's start by creating the frequency function. I created the bins, which is the highest side of each bracket, and now I'll start creating my frequency function. And to create my frequency function, I'm selecting one cell more than the number of rows I have for the bins. And this is because in the last one, it will calculate how many scores do I have above 90, the last bin. And let's start creating the bins function. With all the range selected, I'll start typing equal frequency. And then the frequency screen tip prompts me for a data array, which simply means the list of scores. I'll select the first value in the list of scores, and because I don't want to drag down, I'll use the shortcut Shift Control down arrow, and then I'm going to lock it by hitting the F4 key. And then I'll hit comma. The second argument for the frequency function is the bins array, which is the range that I just created, the highest side of each bracket, and I'm going to lock it as well. Close the bracket, and don't forget, if you hit enter, your function will not work. You must hit Control Shift Enter because it's an array function. And when I do that, the frequency function tells me that you have 12 occurrences between 41 and 50. You have 17 students who got between 51 and 60, and let's say 18 students between 71 and 80, and so on. And that's fine. This is called the frequency distribution. I was able to find out how many students I have, how many scores I have in each bracket. But it will be a lot easier for me if I could represent these values in a histogram. What is a histogram? A histogram is a special type of column chart where you don't have gaps between the columns, and the columns have a pyramidal distribution. So let's see how we create a histogram. I'm selecting the different brackets and the result of my frequency function, and I'll go to the Insert tab, and on the Insert tab of the ribbon, I'm going to select a column chart, and I'll be selecting the simplest column chart, and this is a regular column chart. I'll put it to the side. First of all, I want to convert it, I want it to look like a histogram. Here on the horizontal axis I have the categories, and that's fine. And on the vertical axis I have the number of students, or the result of my frequency function. To make it look like a histogram, I'm going to click on one of the columns, and notice when I click on any one of the columns, all the columns are selected. And then I'm going to right click and select Format Data Series. I could have double clicked on one of the columns. That's the same exact thing. And here, to make it look like a histogram, I want to decrease the gap between the different numbers. And I can even remove it completely if I want, but I'll keep a very little gap, let's say 2 or 3% between the different columns. And this is what we call a histogram. Let's make it look even better. First of all, I want to add the result of the frequency function. This is called data label. We have a little plus sign to the upper right corner of my chart. So if I click on that, I would like to add data labels, and I'll add them to the inside end. So I'll click on the right pointing arrow and select inside end. I got the numbers, but they are very tiny, so I'll click on one of the numbers, and exactly like in case of columns, when you click on one of them, you are selecting all of them, so you can format them by going to the Home tab, and then bump it up a little bit. I'm making it size 12, I'm making it bold, and I'll make it white, so it will stand out in my chart. Now, after adding these numbers to my histogram, I need also to make it look even better. So I don't need this vertical axis anymore. So let's go and remove it. So if I click on the plus sign, I have a vertical and a horizontal axis. I don't need the vertical axis because I already added the values to my histogram, and now my chart grows bigger. Also, these horizontal lines are distracting a little bit, so I'll remove them. These are called grid lines, so I'll remove the grid lines as well. As a final step to improve the appearance, I can be adding a style, and the styles are in the second icon on the upper right corner. You have a list of styles. You can select among the styles, but it looks I don't have a much collection, so I'll take care of that myself. I'll click on one of the columns, and as usual, it's selecting and highlighting all the columns, and I would like to make it a 3D column or a 3D histogram, so I'll go to the Format tab of the ribbon, and each one of these columns is a rectangle, so it's a shape. So if I click on Shape Effects and then select Bevel, I can make it a bevel effect, and now it looks a lot better. One final thing I would like to make, I want to add a descriptive title, so I can select the title and start typing. That's one way of doing things. But if I select the title and hit the F2 key, and then I type an equal sign in the formula bar, and I'm going to click on the cell having the title that I want, which is cell I1 Imager. The moment I hit enter, look at that, I'm linking my title to this chart, and that's very dynamic. So if at any time you change your title in the spreadsheet, it will be updated as well in your chart. What we did right now is called a frequency distribution. We used the frequency function and we created a histogram, a special type of chart that shows a pyramidal distribution, the number of occurrences in each bracket. I would like to do the same exact thing using a much easier technique without having to use an array function, without having to hit Ctrl-Shift-Enter. So let's see another example. In my next example, I have a list of customers, and I have the sales for these customers in millions. As I did before, I created a min function to find out the lowest amount, and I created a max function in cell F3 to find out the highest amount. And I created the intervals in column J. So how many occurrences do I have between 51 million and 60 million? How many occurrences do I have between 61 and 70? Or the number of clients who fall in each one of these brackets. I also created the bins array, and the bins array simply means the highest side of each bracket. In my previous example, I used a frequency function to analyze, but in this example, I'll use one of the built-in tools available in Excel. If you click on the Data tab of the ribbon, you will look at the very right of your ribbon and you will find Data Analysis. This is what I'll be using. It's a built-in tool. You might not have the same exact thing that I have. If you don't see Data Analysis, it's an add-in, which means it's a little application that you add on top of Excel. If you don't have it, let me show you how to add it to your Excel interface. It adds a lot of functionality to Excel. Let's go and add it. So if you don't have the Data Analysis tool, please click on the File tab and then click on Options. The Excel Options dialog box opens, and then I'll click on Add-ins. When you click on add-ins, you need to go and bring these add-ins. You need to manage your add-ins. We have different types of add-ins, but the default is what I want, Excel add-ins. And I'll click on Go. When you click on Go, it opens a list of add-ins. If you check Analysis Toolpath, this is the one that will add data analysis to your interface. I have it already checked, so I'm going to hit cancel, but in your case, if you don't have it, you have to check it here. So I'm going to hit cancel, and you should be able to see the data analysis toolpath. Let's go and use it. I want to analyze my data. I want to create a frequency distribution in the histogram, but this time I'll be using the data analysis. If you click on data analysis, when I click on data analysis, it offers multiple options to me. It's not simply for creating a frequency distribution in the histogram. We can create a lot more than that. But I'll be creating a frequency distribution and a histogram, so I'll select histogram and then hit OK. A dialog box opens, and in this dialog box you might see values from a previous exercise, so I'm going to delete these values. To start with a blank or an empty box, I'll click in the input range, and the input range means where is the range that you want to analyze. I'll start by selecting sales in millions, and then I'll hit Shift Control down arrow to select the entire range. And then it's asking me, where is your bin range? I was ready for that, and I created my bin range before starting the exercise, so I'll put my blinking cursor and click and drag. I'm selecting the label, and because I'm selecting the label, I'm going to check this box, labels, which means I'm telling the tool that the first value in each one of these ranges is just a label. And then it asks me about the output range. Where would you like to get your frequency distribution? So I want to get it in cell M1, let's say, and I would like to create a chart as well. So I'll check the box for chart output. And I'm done. When I hit OK, look at that. These are the bins. It shows me the bins, and it shows me the frequency in each bin. I didn't have to create a frequency function. I didn't have to use Control-Shift-Enter as I did before, and the histogram is created for me. So as we did before, I'm going to improve the appearance a little bit. It's a regular chart, so I'll select it. This is called the legend, the color key. I don't need it because I have one single series, so I don't really need it. So I'll select it, and if I delete it by hitting the delete key, that will make my histogram grow bigger. The next thing I want to do is to reduce the gap between these columns to make it look like a histogram. So I'm going to double click on one of the columns, and it brings the format data series panes. So I'm going to reduce the gap, let's say to 2 or 3%, just a minimal gap between the columns. I'll keep only 2%, and I'll close the format data series. And with my columns selected, I could change the color by going to the Design tab of the ribbon and select a different color. I could select a gradient color if I want. I'm going to select this color, and I want to make it look even better. So on the Format tab, I'll be adding the beveled effect. That makes your chart looks better. And here you go. If you wish to add the values, that's what we did in our previous example, in the scores example, when I added the labels, so you can do it on your own. I'm not going to repeat that. We created a histogram. We created a frequency distribution. The first example, we used the frequency function and Control-Shift-Enter because it's an array function. In the second example, I used the data analysis tool. It's an add-in that you add to the right side of your data tab. In my next video, I'm going to show you an amazing tool that you can use for creating a frequency distribution. It's a new tool. Few people know about it. It's called the people chart. So thank you for watching, and stay tuned.